Anyway, we're going to move on, and I'm going to invite Alexander Cole from Peekaboo Studios to speak. Alexander, to keep this idea of people from around the world being here, is from Cleveland, Ohio. Today is Thanksgiving. See, just especially for you.
Appreciate it.
He's running away after this session to cook a meal for a load of people, okay? And he said, we're all invited. But you haven't told me the address.
Funny about that.
Funny. Anyway, Alexander from Peekaboo Studios.
Thanks very much for having an American over here, particularly given current events. For the record, I am a tourist myself. I've just got lost for the past 8 years, haven't been able to find my way home, so I might as well do this for lack of anything better to do. Edinburgh's been a really good home to me, and so it's my pleasure to talk today about virtual reality, which is stupid exciting lately. The funny thing about virtual reality goes back to the funny thing about all the consumer technologies that we've been dealing with for the past few years. The mobile phone obviously changed everything that we know about interactivity, about computers, about what software is, about how people want to interact with technology, but it's not one technology. A mobile phone is a screen. Well, there were screens long before that, because I remember those stupid digital picture frames that would show you pictures of your grandkids that do nothing else. There were speakers beforehand. There were GPS units beforehand that would always get you lost and talk to you in robot voice while they got you lost. All these components existed well before there was the mobile phone. It's just that someone put them together in a blender, spun them around a few times, and made them into something where all those things were working together all at once, making something contiguous, a new experience using these existing technologies and refining them for a particular kind of experience. And this is what we're dealing with for VR. This is the exciting thing. VR in itself has been around for a while. Screens have been around for a while. Accelerometers have been around for a while. Buttons have been around for a while, shockingly. But putting them all together is what makes VR what it is. There's just one problem when you're talking about it. When I talk about a mobile phone or an app, or something on the TV, I can show it to you. You can see exactly why it's cool. You can see why it's so neat. The problem with VR is that it always looks like this. This is what it looks like to do it. This is the good and the bad right here. No matter what you've seen or heard about VR, when you watch someone do it, this is basically the deal. You strap something on their face, you put some headphones in their ear, and suddenly, for no reason that anyone can discern, they look like a ninny standing up, grasping at things that aren't there. They're having the most intense experience of their lives, and they can't see straight. It is bizarre. It is surreal. And this is the problem with what I'm going to be showing you, and this is why we're going to have to suspend a little disbelief while I show you this, so that you can imagine it. Just for reference, has anyone here tried a VR headset? Awesome. You guys are so pro. This is great. So, for those who have not, please bear, I'm going to be talking at a slightly lower level, and that's great, showing you some stuff, and I'll extend a bit of courtesy there. For those of you who have, please feel free to look virtually smug as you do so. Highly recommend that. So for those who have not, just so that we can be all on the same page, virtual reality is simulating an artificial environment, usually with audio and video, and often some other interactive bits to it, like controllers that can feed back to you. You take what someone sees, you stick a screen over their face, and you put something else there. You take what someone hears, you put this over their ears, and you put something else there. And if you do that and get that right, you create this environment where they think and believe and see something else. So, how is that typically accomplished? But before we get there, this is not small. 2 years ago, this was only a $90 million market. This is nothing, a drop in the bucket. It barely exists. The VR as a concept has been around for a while. In 2018, that's going to go up to $5.2 billion, and I actually think that's quite a lowball figure. Now, that's typically taking into account the hardware, the software that goes into it, and the associated people who make and build this kind of thing. That's not taking into account the increase that you can have from things like footfall, like things from promotion, like things from marketing. Showing someone another place, another venue, another experience has knock-on benefits all the way down. And the reach at 2018 is expected to be 171 million. Again, I think that's a serious lowball. But there are caveats to this that we'll get into in a moment. So, typically, VR takes place in a headset that looks not unlike this. This is the HTC Vive. There's also the Oculus Rift. PlayStation has one. Google's got one. My mother's got one. Pretty much everyone has their own bit to it. So the screen's in the front there. There are headphones that go down the sides there so that you can have that. Inside there, in addition to the screen and a number of other things, there's also a little accelerometer which tracks how you tilt and orient your head. As you turn, it knows that you've turned. As you tilt your head, it knows that you've tilted your head and can track that. This one in particular also has extra sensors along the outside there, which makes you look like a total bug alien, that track the space around you, so that you can project and see when there's a wall coming so that you don't make yourself a complete idiot, only a moderate idiot as you do this. A lot of these systems, like the HTC, also include controllers that go along with it. These are typically wireless, you hold them in your hand, and these can also be tracked by what their orientation is. So if I turn it like this, it knows that I've done that. If I orient it like that, it knows that I've done that. If I press a button, it knows that I've done that too, which means it knows where to place my hands in this virtual space, which means I can interact with things. This is the top-end kind of configuration there. And it comes with, which I'll get to in a moment, sensors that are all in a room so that it tracks how you move. So that as you walk around a space, it knows that you're walking around a space and can reflect that in the virtual environment that you see. The problem with that, these cost a crap ton of money. Far too much money. These are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Probably the entire setup itself is $1,000. And as Brian earlier mentioned, that PCs themselves are a dying breed, that we're going more and more towards mobile. That's true. The only thing that's driving PC sales, if you're not a professional, is powering stuff like this. Because typically you need a computer powerful enough to render all the cool interactivity that's going on there. But that is not the only setup for these kinds of things. This year, Google released their Daydream setup, which straps this set of goggles, which is little more than lenses and a headset and a fabric-covered thing that they're really proud of that's fabric-covered, because who doesn't love fabric? You take your phone as it is, you put it in place there, you start the Daydream app, and there you experience all your stuff there. This comes with a little controller as well, so that you can interact with things, and that's great. Google also, as a lot of you may know, has something else that does this. It's made of cardboard. It's called the Cardboard. Can't tell you why. The same premise applies here. You take your phone, you put it in front, you strap it closed, and you have VR, for lack of a better definition there. These are as valid VR experiences than anything else. The limitations here are typically that it won't track how you walk around, so that even as you try to walk around, it won't track that experience there, which is really disconcerting for people watching them try and fall over their couch. But it will still give you the visuals. It will still track how you turn around. And the content for this can be created on people's own devices. I make photospheres when I go on holidays so that people can see what it's like to stand right in front of the Vatican or in the middle of Glencoe. And all they have to do is strap one of these to their faces, hold up the device, look around, and they can see that, experience that, and even hear the audio that I was hearing, including people saying to me, "Why are you doing this? You look like an idiot trying to capture all this." Capturing this is getting better not just on mobile devices, but there are more and more 360-degree cameras that are being sold all over right now, and the price on these is plummeting. These can be had for a couple £100 tops these days. They will track 360-degree video all around you. It'll be roughly the equivalent of 720p in all directions around you, and you can take this pretty much anywhere for people to experience content wherever you want it to go. You no longer need gigantic rigs to be able to create content of existing spaces when you do that. And that makes for some pretty cool experiences. If, for example, you wanted to climb Moscow Tower or see what it would look like to do that very thing. Why? I'm not sure, but some people think it's a great idea to do. The experience of that, wherever you want to go, can be captured now. And people with just their own mobile devices can see what that person saw in any direction they want to look down. So if the guy's telling you not to look down and you really want to look down, you can look down. I'm not recommending looking down. This is a great example of content that's already there, especially where tourism is concerned. Nothing needed to be created here beyond what's ordinarily done for video production. You take your camera, you bring it on some exciting trip, or some journey to some new space, and you show off the existing beauty or interest of the place that you want to take it to. And you can bring that to anyone. And this can be distributed on YouTube's own 360-degree channel. Seriously, don't do this at home. This can be distributed. YouTube has their own 360-degree channel for cardboard. This is clearly upsetting some of you. But you couldn't do this in any other place. Nowhere could you make people feel vertigo in any other place on their own couch without virtual reality. But this can be distributed on lots of different platforms to people with their devices as they already are. And you can even brand the Google Cardboard unit that you want to send out to them and have them hold this up just in front of their faces and let them experience that little tiny bit of virtual reality right then and there. But that's not the only way. That's probably the simplest possible implementation. As I was saying, what you can do beyond just showing the video of things is set up a space like this. So inside this orange box, at the apex of each one of those corners there, are little sensors. They look like speakers if you were having a really cool quadraphonic sound system. But in this case, they're infrared trackers that are looking for the units that you've got, those two controllers and the headset, in this space there. Which means they know where you are, where you're looking, where your hands are, and where everything is taking place within that environment. Which means as you walk around, the environment can respond to that. You can go up to things. You can interact with things. And when you do that, you get crazy experiences like this. So as soon as you take a controller, as he walks around, as she looks around, and she points at something, she can walk right up to this little robot dog, interact with it. She can play fetch with it, tell it to roll over. Now, this is being filmed inside a green screen space so that we can see, as I said, what they're seeing in this space. But this is what it looks like to them while you had that strapped on. As she moves around, she's able to interact with these spaces. She's able to cover distances. This guy is standing on the precipice of a battlement here, but he can adjust his position. He can get down lower so that he can fire from down here. And as he does so, his angle changes. But primarily what it's conveying is that sense of space and the emotion that comes around with it. You can put someone underwater in a video game, but when a whale walks up behind them, in a video game they don't freak out because of it. Because that's what you can do. It's not just the Panto series of he's right behind you. This is about creating an emotion, an experience there. So with interactivity, she can walk from one space to another. She can pick up these donuts, eat them individually, and have this hilarious experience. Conveying emotion is probably what VR does almost better than any other technology right now when it's done correctly. So there are two, as I said, primary ways to do this. You can either take a camera and capture content that's already there and bring the experience of being in a place to someone who's not in that place. Or you could digitally create something that doesn't exist or augment stuff that already does. So you can take a historical site and show what it would have looked like while you walk around in the time when it was, bustling and really exciting. You can put a roller coaster in the middle of an experience that you can go around in a place that you would see a vantage point that you never would have seen before. Both of these require different investments in terms of creating that content. When you film it, it's the same as video production by and large, though it is slightly more complicated when you're dealing with 360-degree video and stitching that together, but not by much. But it's the same investment of time and effort to create quality content, even fictional stories. And with this, it's the same as creating a 3D environment, much like a video game. You need to create a space, it needs to be interactable, it needs to be interesting, visually exciting, and there's a cost that comes along with that. But when you do, you can create some pretty crazy stuff. This is an upcoming VR game where you have those two controllers in front of you and you're in zero gravity, so you need to clamber your way along this space station to get around, to look at stuff as these robots inevitably turn on you and things inevitably go wrong. Not that there's anything wrong with going into space and things going terribly wrong. But you can take out your controller, you can cut down the length here when you need to get your into something, and that interactivity is what makes it exciting. This looks awesome, unmistakably. Really, really cool. And for video games, this is really, really neat. But as you might expect, the investment of time, effort, getting the interactivity, the user experience correct is a huge outlay. It's very, very difficult to get right. So for tourism and for a number of other things, more often than not, you're promoting stuff that's already there and you're filming it. And that means taking the camera to the places that you're going to see it. Not difficult, and particularly Scotland in and of itself has a number of locations where that's a great experience and a great idea. And more, this is going live. So that live, you're able to pick up a headset and see what someone is doing in real time, watching them do it. And that makes for some particularly exciting experiences. This guy is walking through Japan for the very first time. Now, he's sitting in his chair, and you can see the relationship between what he looks around at, and he can look wherever he wants to. But this is as simple as Japan's rail station. It can be as simple as that, and you can let people have these experiences and get them to it. Now, take note. He looks like a ninny. This is, as I said, the problem from the outset. When you strap one of these things on your face, and you have the headset there as well, even the painting applications, you're watching someone have an intense, emotional, engrossing, engaging experience, and you're watching them look like an idiot while they do it. The disparity there couldn't be more pronounced. And this is one of the issues that's also hilarious about VR, but when you're talking about distribution to people, when you're talking about letting more than one person experience all these things, this is something to take into account. And in fact, ideally something to make fun of, and why all these VR videos up on YouTube have someone with the video of them doing it in place there. You want to see how their actions affect this, and you also want to see how silly it all looks from their perspective. It gets cooler than that, because when you know the perceptions, when you know the angle that someone's looking, you want to do that in real time. You can take something as simple as a drone and fly it using VR. You send the drone up, the drone has a camera, the drone traditionally has a screen in front of you where you can use to orient that camera, but instead, you wire the camera's controls to the VR headset. So that as he looks around, the camera looks around, which means if you want to film something, you film it by looking around. This guy is now the cinematographer of this drone, and it changes as he does stuff. All that's doing is moving a drone to different locations. It's his view that changes it. There are now drone races where people strap one of these to their face and navigate the drone through obstacle courses, and they race to see who can do this. You don't want to do that with the screen. You want to do that at whatever ridiculous speeds you can do by strapping something to your face. And this is the kind of thing that when you're conveying a sense of place, the sense of location, the sense of environment, the sense of being somewhere else, particularly from a vantage point that you could not get anywhere else, not just by walking, this is the kind of thing that can be done for a not extortionate fee these days, and creates really magical experiences, the kind of things where you can take someone they've never been before from a vantage point they've never seen before. And you could take it further than that. I don't need to say too much about this. This is a platform. A guy's laying on it. He has the VR headset, so he sees stuff. It tracks his angle. It's providing audio. Depending on the speed that he's going in the app, the fan picks up speed so that the wind rushes past his face. He needs to flap to get higher. He can tilt. He can fly this way. And one step further, depending on what part of the city that he's flying over, there are 8 specially prepared vials of different scents. So it will provide the smell of whatever he's flying over at that time. So if he's flying over the dump, it provides the smell of rubbish. If he's flying over the city, it provides the smell of exhaust fumes from cars. It gives him a complete sensory experience, even the one of falling slightly. Because as he does that, he's inverted, and he gets that rush of blood to his head. He gets that experience of flying around like this. This is stupid expensive. Let me be clear. But I had the most fun doing this a couple years ago than I've ever had almost anything else. It is insanely cool. It conveys a sense of actually doing the thing that you promise, VR was always meant to do. This is the kind of thing where we talk about where technology is going. This is the kind of experience you can create. There are these versions of these on roller coasters, where as you go around the roller coaster, you see Superman flying around you, and you're flying with him because you had that experience. Those are the scent bottles, by the way. I don't ask what's in them. When you're on that roller coaster, you can get the sense of your stomach lurching, and it doesn't matter where you are because you're still feeling that sense of flying and weightlessness. There are these on big elastic bands. NASA just released one about what it would be like to land on Mars. You strap one of these to your heads, you can look around at the control panel that's laid out in front of you, and as you land, the thing drops out so that you get that genuine feeling and that genuine lurch there. When you're trying to convey experiences, nothing's better than crazy stuff like this. So, to take a breath, tourism and VR is a really interesting marriage because you can convey the sense of a place without someone actually being there. And you can deliver that to people's devices right now, even to the phones they already have, via Cardboard, via Daydream, even just being, through Facebook 360-degree video, YouTube 360-degree video. As they go to those channels and just move their phone around, they already have the delivered experience of seeing what it's like and looking around wherever they want to. You can also distribute that through more professional channels for the Vive, for the Oculus Rift, for a number of other things, and create more professional, interactable things that people can click on stuff with controllers. They can pull out stuff. They can have information overlaid when they look at something or touch something in this virtual space. And when you have a space set up, if your particular destination or attraction merits this, where you put the sensors in all those corners and create a box, that's a destination. That's something people are going to want to try and want to do, but you have to get people to it. So if you can do that, if you already have the footfall to merit this and want to sell someone a place other than that, you have this almost theme park-like or arcade-like experience. You can make virtual reality a destination. And this is particularly true because of how expensive a lot of these units are. You're not going to ship one of these to every one of your customers, and people aren't going to have it in their homes for a long, long time yet. But you are able to have one to service thousands and perhaps millions of customers with just one application. So, primarily, the takeaway here, the 3 E's of VR, which are their benefits. This is an experience, no question about it. If a lot of you have done it, that's great, and you get a sense of that this is properly experiencing a new place. It's not a video, it's not a video game, it is the sense of being there. That's one of the most powerful things it's able to do. You are exploring that place as well, because it's self-guided. You look where you want to as a user. You interact with what you want to as a user. It isn't static, it isn't stuck on a screen, you're there as far as you're concerned. But my personal favorite and the most compelling one is the emotion. Nothing in the digital space conveys emotion like VR. Nothing at all. It surpasses all your senses. It covers these, replaces it with something else, and you are suddenly thrust into a new environment. Watching people use this for the first time is amazing because in addition to them looking like an idiot, they're having an incredible time, amazing time, and nothing does that as well as VR. But the 3 A's, we can't ignore them. First, access to it. It's still in its infancy. This is still the wild west of of a technology right here. There is no one platform. There is no one agreed upon technology for developing these. There is no one agreed upon platform for distributing the applications that go along with it. And these things have tremendous problems in terms of access. And that goes along with their affordability. The biggest units and the most complicated ones cost. They still do. That means you're not going to expect your average user to have one of these yet. But if your location merits it, you can have one for your space and convey the sense of other places as well. For those in a hotel chain, conveying the sense of other places in your range. Just being able to do that with people by doing it in your lobby, you can give them that tourist-like sense like they get from a travel agent. And finally, the applicability. Anytime you have a new technology, you treat it like a hammer and everything looks like a nail. Don't shove VR where it doesn't belong. It can convey amazing experiences, but there's a lot that it doesn't need to be. I was discussing with someone earlier about people having their honeymoon through VR. Please don't do this. Please do not. There are great, great applications of conveying this sense of experience in place, but make sure that it works for the technology, that it works for the platform, and that it's the kind of thing that people want to see again and again. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Alex. And again, if you think this is way ahead in the future, it's not really. Again, at the festivals last year, we did a couple of experiments in this territory. With Hogmanay, the torchlight procession, we took a 360-degree camera, and you can get that on Google Cardboard. Use it in Google Cardboard. Did the same with the tattoo. They are not being used on platforms for business to consumer at this stage because of issues of access and affordability, but they are being used sometimes in trade fairs to give the business to business side of things. So you imagine for tour operators at trade fairs, these things might be applicable. So sometimes it's thinking of it, how could you apply this to your business, not necessarily directly to the consumer, but to give an experience for tour operators and travel operators is quite interesting as well.